So I'll actually use the lathe today. So, quick safety thing, don't wear gloves. So I've got these are fine, but don't wear the bigger gloves. Goggles, preferably face mask, but definitely goggles. Hair, if you've got long hair, make sure it's tied back or in a net. I know 2 incidents of people getting scalped by lathes, bigger lathes than this, but this will definitely do it. If that sounds horrible, it's much worse than you can imagine, and there were young chaps as well, unfortunately. Right, so first thing we need to do is to fit the tool. So this, I'm going to use a part and off tool. Right, so this will go in here, and what you've got to do is you've got to check the height of the tool. Right, so come on. There's a detent that stops you from doing this, okay? So you always find the correct position, but you've got to do it this way to line the tool up. So what you do, you line the tool up to the centre. You can see that. So you can see there that we're quite a bit under. And the rule is that you either got to be on exactly on centre or very slightly below. You can't go above, okay? It's got to be either on centre, and much preferably there, or very slightly below, okay? So I'm going to get some packing material. I'll have to cut some, and we'll pack this out to get at the right height. So that's it on centre line now. I've just cut up some strips of metal to use as packing pieces. So I actually took 5, which surprised me. There you go. So this has to be nice and tight, obviously. Well, one thing I'll just point out is, in the last video I mentioned that this tool slide was loose, and it was because of the nut here was loose. Cut a long story short, that nut is actually a nylock nut, and the thread of the spindle is too short for the nylock nut, so the nylon part, the bit that actually locks it, wasn't actually touching the thread. So I've had to use a bit of nut lock, a bit of this stuff, thread lock, to keep the nut in place. And with that, everything's nice and tight now. So that's in place. So we'll go and get our bit of metal. So this is a bit of pipe I'm going to part off. It won't go in the inside diameter, so what we'll have to do is clamp it on the outside. Just to be clear, if I did clamp it on the inside, I'd actually part it off about here first of all, and then cut the ring I need. If you try and part it off at the end here, it's such a big turning moment, you can actually cause the piece to come out, okay? Obviously you don't want that. So open the jaws up. I did put some oil in this. I think you saw that in the first video. Not too much though, because most of it's going to fly out. So because I'm holding it here, I should be able to part it off, because I've got quite a good clamp on that, so I should be able to just part straight off on the end. Now one thing to remember is you tighten each of the scrolls, okay? Don't forget that, okay? Don't just tighten one and think that they're all tight. I'll just double check that. Yeah, so make sure each one you're tight. Okay, it's really obvious with a 4-jaw chuck, but this one, although it's got a scroll that's synchronising the movements, right? That's any machining or wear in the scroll will mean that one of these might not be completely tight. Okay, so make sure you tighten each one. Right, and I'm hoping what we'll do is we'll start it off nice and slow, and we'll just make sure that it's you know, actually in a line before we start parting it. You could do that with a DTI. I do have a DTI, but what I'll do is I'll just use the tip of this just to visually see it. Before I do that, obviously I'm going to go and get my goggles. Right, stand by. Right, I'm going to resharpen the bit again. It's really soft, very soft. It is hardened steel, but I don't know what hardened steel. It's not stellite. It's fun, eh? I hate parting off, because I told you that. I'm going to stop there because I've got to go and cook the dinner. Right, but if you can see, it's basically parted through now. It literally be held on by a thread. I think if I grabbed it and pulled it, it'd actually fall off. So, problems. Well, what's causing the problem there mainly is vibration. I think the tools are really poor quality. I've reshaped the face of it, and that's made things a lot easier. They are hardened steel. I can see that when you grind it, when you grind a mild steel, you get really bright sparks. When you grind a very hard steel, they look quite dull. And there's not so many of them, so it is hard steel. It's not great. I've had to regrind it a few times. The main problem is vibration. Okay, the whole thing is vibrating. Let's get this off. Switch off here. Let's not touching anything. Yeah, so the main problem is vibration. So I can't feel it vibrating. Can't feel any moving, but it is vibrating. Okay, that's why I started cutting here, and then thought, right, I'll retry here. As I say, it's basically parted, you know. But yeah, not great. I mean, it's a lathe and it's the tools. Okay, so if you get those tip tools, the ones that you can change the tips, probably going to be better, for sure. It might not be perfect, but it'll be better. Yeah. And this is about as difficult a test for this lathe, to be absolutely clear. If I went and put in a piece of metal just to face it, or put an head, run along it, you wouldn't get this problem. Okay, this is parting tool. The parting tool is very thin and it tends to vibrate by itself, right? Which is always a problem for all lathes. Okay, I hate parting off. I'll be honest with you, but it's done it. You know, I know I haven't finished it, but it has done it. So it does work. But yeah, it's not ideal. Not ideal. But I'm used to big. When I was at sea, I used really big lathes with big CNC type digital management of the slides and tools and all that. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well. Could have gone better, but it's alright, it's okay. Yeah, bit of a fight, but it's okay.